Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. I'm often amused and sometimes quite and get annoyed when I hear the politicians, the community leaders, the people who think that they are the movers and the shakers of the world say diversity is our strength. I marvel, do they really believe it? Or is it a sham and hypocrisy to build up their own vote banks? I presume that they are either ignorant or they are willfully misstating the facts. Diversity does not strengthen a country, does not make a country strong. Diversity weakens a country. Well, don't be shocked. That's the reality. Most of the nations face a real test when they want to maintain national identity. It is all the more difficult when the people come from disparate backgrounds and the government's, the political leaders' main effort is in avoiding problems that occur with the ethnic conflict. Now, this may not be visible. The conflict can be of two natures. One is an open conflict, as is happening in the third world countries like Nigeria, Somalia, Rwanda. It can be simmering and bubbling, as in Pakistan, as in India. And it can be under the surface, as in Canada. And sometimes when we seek the reality beneath the surface, we have got to understand why do we try to mislead ourselves? Why do we have blinkers on? And many times, some political leaders create firestorms by their statements. Maxim Bernier recently, before the elections, used his Twitter account to criticize the cult of diversity perpetually promoted by the federal liberals. And I'm not saying that the conservatives are above this. They equally say diversity is our strength. And they have got to say it because otherwise people from the different backgrounds will not vote for them. As a matter of fact, he has a valid point, Bernier. And I'm no supporter of Bernier otherwise. But his unfair comments about the people who refuse to integrate in our society and want to live apart in their ghettos does not make our society strong. And that's why my grouse is against the multiculturalism. Most immigrants come to Canada to build a better life in a free and democratic society. They free from the tyranny, prejudice, economic circumstances of their countries. And when they come to Canada, what do? They gravitate to their ethnic communities so that they can adjust in their homes. Nothing wrong with that because that's a human nature. But it is nonetheless true that Canada faces a real test in maintaining national identity when so many people come from disparate backgrounds. And you remember Trudeau had stated there is no national identity of Canada. But he refused to say why it's not there. It is not there. Let's be very clear. You're a Quebecer, you're an Ontarian, you're an Albertan, and you're not a Canadian. You're a Indo-Canadian, you're a Pakistani Canadian, Italian Canadian. Where the hell are the real Canadians? This hyphenation itself shows the lack of national identity. And the problem is that the local ethnic communities help get the new immigrant adjusted. But that doesn't solve the problem. Now, one thing I would not deny that in principle, ethnic diverse populations can be economically rewarding. Economically, they are rewarding. They provide more products and services, and choices are more. Immigration brings workers with greater variety of background. They spur more innovation since people with a different perspectives combine ideas in a way that would not happen in homogeneous societies. A heterogeneous society always has more ideas because then there's a flow. However, there's a major flip side, and that's the fragmentation. No, you would say, how? Citizens identify more often with a social group rather than with the nation as a whole, potentially leading to the conflict. It may not be there, as I said, it may be only beneath the surface. But it's like a volcano which is lying dormant, but it can burst open any moment. And that is a danger. Canada today is the most ethnically diverse and fragmented country in the world. Only sub-Saharan countries, African countries, and some Latin American countries are like so. And this fragmentation impacts the voting behavior. Otherwise, do you think that the liberals would have concentrated on 905 areas for the voting? If it was not economically advanced country, as it is Canada, it might have been suffering from civil strife as well. The only thing which is saving Canada is that it's economically very, very stable. Social scientists have seen, and they are puzzled that the people vote against their own evident economic interest. Look at what happened this time. Everybody was against the liberal government because of the carbon tax. People didn't want it. And yet, more people ensured that the liberals win. They have voted against their interest. Poor people might sometimes vote for less wealth distribution and rich people for more. But one thing is there, the social identity, grouping people according to the income, ethnic background, religion, everything is there. But national identity is not. So the people who identify more strongly, more forcefully with a national identity suffer. And that's why the hyphenation happens. I normally use a very strong word. I call it bastardization. I don't call it hyphenization. And the socio-economic theory, socio-identity economic theory, has made this a major object of the study. Now look at it. Harvard political economist I was reading, Albano, he was reading the linguistic diversification of nearly 200 countries in the last 2 decades. And the most fragmented society, having lower growth per capita income, suffer from acute social conflict. And it brings out Nigeria and Rwanda as those countries. And there's no evidence that ethnic and social fragmentation leads to higher growth. Now, let's be very clear. Apparently, we think that the immigrants, when they come, they lead to the economic growth. And the whole system is ensuring that only those people come who can contribute to economic growth, but it doesn't happen so. Family reunions, immigration of the people above the age of 50 or 60 or 65, whatever it is, does not enable the country to grow economically. More of the parasites come, and then the moment they come, they go on welfare. So, and that means that even if these immigrants have not been there, Canada is advanced economically, developed economically because of the natural resources. It is not economically advanced because of immigrants. It is economically advanced in spite of immigrants. But that doesn't mean that I'm against immigration. No. immigration is required for Canada. However, immigration should be such that when the people come, we should ensure that they assume the Canadian identity, the diversity which we always laud and promote should be discouraged. They should not be asked to live in the social ghettos, separate. I mean, say, really, when I go to Brampton, for example, or to Surrey, I find it's no better than Punjab. I go to Mississauga, it's no better than mini Pakistan. I go to Richmond Hill, it's just as if I am in a part of China. And that is what is wrong. There's little Italy, there's little China, little India, little Pakistan. Why can't we have Canada all over? And if we look at it, the ethnic fragmentation, we would see that in 40 years, according to Professor Elstein of Harvard, we'll have less GDP growth than any other country. And when ethnically fragmented society, you can see that associated with a high degree of income equality, the risk of the social conflict is there. And since inequality is less severe in Canada, we are lucky. Otherwise, we would not be lucky enough, and we might have been facing the same situation as Bolivia, for example, is facing today. Another point, fragmentation of the society impacts even the governance. Ethnically fragmented societies tend to be more party proliferation, especially under proportional representation. This is a good point that we do not have proportional representation, which liberals and the NDP are demanding, because they will further alienate people from the national identity. They will say, okay, let's vote this way so that proportionally we get more candidates. Voters always gravitate to the parties to which they identify, either culturally or socially, and any political party which can assure them their separate identity being kept would get the voters. And that's why, in India, for example, very strong federal government, but then the provincial governments are 90% based on the ethnic base. It's the local parties. For example, a party in UP has no impact at all in Karnataka, and Karnataka party would have no relevance in Punjab. So all these 29 states, or 28 states now, are ruled by the local parties. It's very rarely that a national party has a role there. There was a time when it was national parties. And now, even when the national parties have a role, they modulate themselves to the regional bias. And it's just not on the national issue. It's even on the local issue. So first past the voting countries like Canada and USA reduce party affiliation, fragmentation aspect. And it's wise not to overplay these conclusions, I would say, because other things are the other factors. Legal history, all this matters. Let's not forget that the religious fragmentation has been correlated with the improved growth. Anything which divides a society has to be kept aside. And good point about Canada is that it's not dividing on the basis of religion or caste or culture, but it's failing in one way that's promoting different cultures. It should be absolutely aloof, and there should be no official patronage of any religion or any other subgroup which is not national and correct. As a matter of fact, one thing which is protecting Canada is the legal history, the British common law and the Napoleon Code of Law, which has provided strong governing institutions since 1867. And it's less corrupt. Corruption is there, We have seen it, but it's less corrupt. So the legal base, less corruption, and the natural resources are protected in Canada. But how long? The strife between the French and the English at one time was a dividing factor. Quebec wanted to leave. Now the economic factors, Albertans and the West. So the large immigration flow from the Eastern Europe and Asia to uninhabited Western Canada before the First World War created a social identity that is different from Central and Eastern Canada. Now we have got to ensure that that identity doesn't fragment further. And otherwise, the Canada, one of the least decentralized federation of the world, can suffer. We have got to see that the leaders wake up to the reality and do not stress on diversity. They should stress on the national aspect, Canadian, the maple leaf. Until that is done, there'll always be a danger of the simmering discontent bursting out in open. We have got to ensure to smoothen the relationships. And anybody who comes to Canada, like me, I should be proud to be a Canadian, period. Not Indo-Canadian, not Pak-Canadian, not Italian-Canadians. And that way lies the salvation of all the societies in the world which have diversity. Otherwise, the solid groups in each nation would be there. And even that's not a good thing. Diversity should be there, integration, but then it should be integrated diversity. Diversity should not become a strength, a divisive factor. As a matter of fact, the moment you come, you merge in it. It should be melting pot. And therein would lie the strength of the country. Thank you.